I can get over my cough. I'm going to introduce an old friend of mine, Buddy Denham, the man who dispensed medication in this community for many years, following in the footsteps of his father and his grandfather. And all of those who are here who remember the days when Denham Drugstore was in business will certainly enjoy hearing Buddy's thoughts and recollections, and we'll have time for questions and answers afterward. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and ask him to tell about his background, how he went through Boone County High, like so many of us, and then on to college and so forth. So let's give a round of applause for Buddy Denham.
My name is Bud Denham. I'm a third-generation pharmacist. My grandfather and father and myself were all got our degree from the University of Kentucky College of Pharmacy. My grandfather in 1898, my father in 1927, and I was in 1975. After I graduated from high school, I didn't start pharmacy school right away. I started out at the University of Kentucky in pre-pharmacy, and then I changed to Eastern Kentucky State College. And I eventually graduated there in a degree in biology and a minor in chemistry with a teaching certificate. But I graduated in the middle of the semester and did not get a teaching job, so I took a job at the Merrill Drug Company in Cincinnati in the autonomic pharmacology department. That's the the system that you can't control, like your muscles and stuff. It's the heart and all that. And I was there for 5 years. And then after I was there for 5 years, I decided to go back to the pharmacy school, and I went back in 1970 and graduated in 1975 from University of Kentucky. My father bought the drugstore in 1948. He moved from Cincinnati because he was regional director of Ledley Drug Company, and he wanted a drugstore, and so I ended up buying the drugstore from Ann Connor, who was a lady pharmacist. And that was in 1948, and we moved here in that year. And it was a different time and space in Florence. Florence was a small town. We had the drugstore that he bought was like 1,200 square feet. It was very long and narrow, and it had a pot-bellied stove. And in the early 50s, it was replaced by a floor heater, the one that you usually see in the houses that you got hotter than the devil when you burnt your feet. And then what he did is that every time I can remember when you go in there in bad weather or rainy weather, you'd always come in and you could hear the sizzling of the water hitting the heater. So we carried practically everything in the drugstore. We had the liquor license, we had candy, we had the full fountain that was a popular thing at that time. Everybody hung out at the fountain, even in the 40s and early 50s. We sold hunting license, fishing license. You could pay your water bills, practically anything you do. We didn't make any money on it, but it was just anything that you could do to attract people to the store. Even in the front of the store, there was Mr. Bennett's barber shop, which you could access to the front of the store, and you go into his area. And some of our neighbors at the time were Roberts and Hudson, or Al Pig Roberts and Bernie Hudson, who had store the filling station next door. There was Pollett's Hatchery. There was the Florence Deposit Bank. Mary Alice's father had it was their own moving storage and a feed store also. There was Martin Brothers Garage and the dispatch for the police department. Dr. Harry Dottie and Dr. Rouse and the Florence Hardware, all within walking distance of the drugstore. In the late 40s, and all the products sold in the store was either sold behind the counter or in a glass case. They didn't have what you see today, like you go in the grocery store for everything you pick up and just take it up to the counter and pay for it. Boone County was a community of small towns like Florence and Walton and Burlington, Hebron, Union, and it kind of reminded me of Andy Griffin's Mayberry, or even Cheers, where everybody knew your name and your business. Thanks to the party line and on the phone company. An example of how small Florence was, and all the small towns in Boone County, that Halloween was a big deal then, and especially Cabbage Night. We had a constable, and his name was Pappy Shears, and he was the one-man police department. And every Halloween or Cabbage Night, they hang him in effigy in front of Stringtown. And then also, I recall one time that my father came to the drugstore after a Cabbage Night and went to open up the drugstore, and the entire front of the store, all the way from the front of the store to the street, nothing but corn stalks. They did a lot of, and that happened all over Boone County. It just didn't happen in Florence. In the 1950s, the drugstore was doing well, and I had kind of outgrown their space. So in 1954, my father bought the property up the street, diagonally across from Stringtown, which was Danny Houston. He was a business owner in Florence, and the drugstore started in 1954. The new store was dramatically different in that it had 4,000 square feet upstairs, and in the basement another 4,000 plus a room in the back for storage. Plus it also had a area in the back of the drugstore that was designed for a doctor's office. And Dr. Lee Hess and Jim Schran, Dr. Lee Hess started in 1957. I'm sure everyone in Boone County knows Lee and Jim. And Jim was drafted into the Air Force in like 1960 and came back to practice in behind the drugstore. They eventually outgrew their space and moved to their new location on 42. We had greeting cards, magazines, cigarettes and tobacco, toys, expanded liquor department, hardware supplies, sewing supplies, anything you can think of. just to get people into the drugstore. The YMCA was just down the street, and the kids would constantly come in and buy candy and ice cream and all that type of thing. And I was over at the hospital about 2 or 3 months ago, and I had the lady who was taking a history, my medical history, asked me, was I related to the Boone, Denham's that owned the drugstore on Main Street. And I said, I explained who I was, and she said, I have a confession to make to you. I said, I was at the YMCA, and one day came up to the drugstore and stole a piece of bubble gum. And I didn't pay for it, and it bothered her so much that the next day she came back. She purchased a 1-cent piece of bubble gum, snuck it back onto the shelf, and left. But she apologized again to me 2 or 3 times, and it affected her so bad. And that was like 30, 40 years ago. In sharp contrast, I've been asked to recommend something for a patient over the counter at the drugstore, and I tell them the benefits of the medication and everything, and then I go back later that night to reorder, and the medication was gone. They took my recommendation, but took the medicine also. Decline in sales to increase competition. We sold the toys, and the store was closed. We had when the store first opened, there was Mary Chane's music shop. And she had music lessons. You could buy records, 45s and 33s. And also we had the key work clothes store, which sold all kinds of work clothes. And my brother-in-law, Dr. Ron Kroom of Dentist in Florence, who's retired now, ran both the key work store and the toy store that they started. And the toy store was comparable to a Johnny's at that time. It had everything in the world in there that you can imagine. In 1975, when I received my pharmacy license, the practice of pharmacy began to change dramatically. My teaching was mainly a clinical type work. You would try to evaluate persons if they had any allergies, any drug interactions between the drugs that they were taking and what they got at the store. We used to keep what we call medication profiles. They would have all the pertinent information of the patient, name, address, birthday, any allergies. And what we would do anytime a prescription came in, we would access their file, make sure that the medication that they were getting that day didn't have any drug interactions or any allergy-related problems.